Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for attending the presentation today. My name is Jim Stubanas. I'm one of the senior consultants who has been involved in Intacct for about 4 years now. The presentation that I'd like to give you today is of the changes that have been put into place just this past weekend, and it is referred to as Update 2016 R1 for first release of 2016. If everyone can see my screen, what I'm going to do is I have a practice company up on the screen here, and I, in fact, am logged in under 2 users. I will be demonstrating some of the features of the update today, including Intacct Collaborate. So the first thing I want to make...
If I may interject here, Jim, I do have everyone on mute. I will be watching the chat window and the questions window, so that if anyone has anything they would like to comment on or has a question about anything, we'll relay it that way, but we'll leave the attendees on mute.
Okay, that's great. The first thing that I want to make the users aware of is that if you want to become familiar with the new release, all you need to do in Intacct is click on the Home button up at the top left-hand corner. Scroll down here towards the middle left of the screen, and you'll see the notations about 2016 R1. As you scroll down through here, you will find hyperlinks to each of the individual enhancements that have been made available in this update. And I'm going to go through each of these one by one and give you an overview on what these enhancements involve. I would recommend, as you have time, take the time yourself to get involved in each one of these. Intacct has started to use YouTube a lot, and many of these hyperlinks will take you directly to a YouTube video that will give more information for you. Probably the biggest enhancement to the product with this upgrade is Intacct Collaborate. Intacct Collaborate is essentially Salesforce.com chatter that they have embedded into the Intacct product. And what this will allow you to do is to communicate with the other users and to record information, including files, against transactions inside of Intacct so that you have a running dialogue within the accounting system. A typical example would be in the old school, someone would say, hey, fill up what's going on with this journal entry. He would reply back in an email, and he'd say, well, this needs to be posted. And I would take that back, and I would post it, and I'd say, okay, now run your financials. Now all you have to do is go into that transaction and click on a button, and you can send a message to that person that will be recorded. I'm going to go in and just give a simple example here in accounts payable. If we go into a bill, and I have some questions about this particular bill. So I'm going to click Edit. And here, I may have a question about what is the support for this bill. So I could say, Steve, can you give me more supporting docs on this invoice? And this will go over to the particular user and message them, and that will come up in their chatter session. They would be able to respond to that and also to include records in it. Now I have another user in here. I'll get my GoToMeeting out of the way. And you'll notice up here in the top right-hand corner, there's like a little bubble, and that is the Intacct Collaboration Center. So they can click on that and they can see their messages. You can also, if you like, go in and you can build a dashboard, which I've done on the other user, and let your dashboard give you visibility to all of the Intacct collaboration features. So on this user, if I go back to my dashboards, I have one called Jim's Dashboard. You'll see here are all of my collaboration chat sessions that are going on. If you already have Salesforce, there's a procedure for implementing this in Intacct. If you do not, you can very easily plug this into the system. If you follow the tech notes, you can have it up and running literally in about 5 minutes. It's a great feature. It's going to give you the ability to cut down on emailing back and forth between staff. It's going to give you the ability to embed files in transactions and message back and forth to your staff within the accounting system. If you're using Salesforce.com, it also will allow you to communicate with your Salesforce. So that product is called Intacct Collaborate. They did, in fact, announce it about 6 months ago. They had some delays on the rollout, and now it's been made available to the entire user base free of charge. So give that a look. I think you'll be very happy with that. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is graphing. So what they have done is they have completely reworked the graphing design tool in Intacct. So if you go in here and you go to create a brand new graph, what you will find is the layout of the graphing system is greatly improved. So what I've done, I'm going to go in here and bring up one that I've created. It used to be that whenever you designed a graph, you would have to make your changes to the graph, save it, then go out and run your graph to see the results. What Intacct has done now is they've embedded the viewing of the graph directly into the design tool, and it allows you to see your data as you build the graph. You can change it around. All you need to do is click refresh, and you can find all the information as you're using it and building out that graph. So they've greatly streamlined the graph design function. In addition to the traditional graphs, they have introduced what they refer to as a waterfall graph. And a waterfall graph is essentially a graphic representation of a change in accounting activity through a period of time. It's either going up or it's going down. So in this particular case, what I did was I recorded an account group called Sales all of my revenue accounts, and I'm running this for my year-to-date. And when I run this waterfall graph, what this is showing me is for my various different sales revenue accounts, I have an increase in each one of these various areas relative to my sales for the year-to-date. So a waterfall graph is intended to represent a change in your accounting data from a previous period, whether it's going up or going down. Give that a look if you're into graphing. It's really a nice enhancement. The next thing that they've done is they have implemented what they refer to as dimension counters. Now imagine this. You are a company that experiences a lot of growth, but you also notice that your customer base seems to go up quickly and drop off. And one of the metrics that you want to be able to measure is your change in your customer base. So what I've done in this particular example is I have created a statistical account right here, and that statistical account 9001 is just a count of my customers. The new feature that they've offered called Dimensional Account gives me the ability to be able to keep track of my number of customers added or lost in my system over a period of time. I have, in fact, created a dashboard with a performance card. And before I started this training session, I went in and I added a new customer. You can see here now, I've got one new customer for the month. And this can be performance in any particular statistical account so that you can view at a glance, particularly on the dashboard, the changes in your system. The way that this is accomplished is first you create an account group. So I've gone over under my accounts receivable, and I have gone in and I have created an account group, and I just called it customers. And these are my active customers because they are the ones that I'm interested in. The new feature of dimensional count then is established under the general ledger, configure general ledger, and you'll need permissions to get into that. And scroll down to the very bottom, and you will see this new feature called dimension count. And what we do here is we choose one of our dimensions, in this case customers, and here's my statistical account 9001 for customers, and that dimensional group I just created in accounts receivable called active customers. Now I have a multi-entity company here, so I chose the first one, GFH, and I said I want to track my customer base through this dimensional count. What this will do then is every time I add a new customer, the system will post to the statistical account 9001, account of 1, for an add a new customer. That's what you see on my dashboard is that plus of that brand new customer. So this is going to give you the ability, if you use statistical accounts, to apply them across your dimensions and measure activity where you'd like to see it count. It could be new orders, could be customer retention, it could be, for instance, returns, anywhere where you want to be able to use the dashboards and measure some statistics. One of the biggest changes that I see now that I'm just thrilled about, one second. Sorry, folks, is that they have greatly improved the functionality of the transaction definitions. Typically, in a multi-entity situation, one of the problems that the customers were reporting was that they had to use the same sequence numbers for instance, sales orders, invoices, purchase orders. They had to use the same logo company-wide, and they had to use the same forms for all of their entities. They have now broken out that capability in the transaction definitions so that you can go in and you can designate that transaction definition for the entire organization, for just a particular entity or group of entities, and then you can further provide the specific forms and logos that apply to that company as well as to the sequence numbers. So you'll find this under transaction definitions. Again, you have to have permission to be able to access this information. On the Entity tab, you will now see where you can go in here and you can assign this transaction definition to a particular entity, group of entities, and then go in and identify your sequence numbers as well as your document templates. So for any of you that are using, have different company logos or need to use different invoice forms for your customers, forms for your purchase orders, this is going to be a great improvement for your use of Intacct. Okay. If you are a international company, one of the features that they have now done is they have allowed you the ability to transfer money to entities using different currencies without any difficulty. So you can transfer from an entity that could be US dollar based over to another country, say a European country that's based on the euro, and you can automatically do those transfers and it will correctly transfer over. On the accounts receivable, they have gone in and they have added into the customer aging the capability to see the days due. So now when you run your reports, you will see that there's a counter included in the report. Expand that a little bit to make it a little bit more visible. And they've added this field called days due. One of the other enhancements that they've done is they've changed the output of the report so that if you're running the aging report based on invoice date, it's now embedded in the detail of the report. They're on the left-hand side up at the top based on invoice date. So if you change that and you run it by select date or GL posting date, you'll see that it's going to change and refresh in the report. So now you don't have to wonder what the basis of the report is. This days due and the aging is also available in the accounts payable as well. In the bank reconciliation module, they have improved the reconciliation for auto match so that now you have some choices on the means by which you want to match your documents. So first I would go over here to the reconciliation mode, I would change this to auto match. Screen changes slightly, and notice here in the sort by, I have some information. I can go in and I can pull this down, and I want to match on document number, so I'm going to add that. I can set the priority that I want the auto match to use for the matching. Over here I have my document number, and now I have the ability to more discreetly do my matching between my documents if I have auto match in bank reconciliation. Okay. And the cash management, they have changed the cash receipts register so that you have better visibility as to the transaction types that are taking place on the deposits and receipts register. If I run this register, you'll want to, first of all, note to check show details. And on the view, what they've done is they've changed this so that you're able to see the payment method in the deposit. And that's visible in both the AR or in the accounts receivable. In accounts receivable, they have also changed their transaction processing so that they support draft mode in both the accounts payable and accounts receivable. They still don't embrace a batch method, but their method of handling things in a batch/approval is to allow you to give the user the ability to save something in draft mode and then give the user maybe a manager permission to go in, review the transaction, and then post it through. One of the other things that they've done is on an invoice by invoice basis, they have included the days overdue. So the drill down on any particular invoice is now going to contain this information. For those of you that are using trial balance, they have now changed trial balance in the general ledger to allow you to run the trial just for statistical accounts. So this button has been added here, and you can set this to only statistical, and if I run this, we'll probably see some of the entries that I put in today. There's those customers. I did a posting of 1,000. Here's that new customer. The basis of this, of course, is that dimensional feature I talked about earlier, and when I added that new customer, the system automatically posted that this new customer was added to the system. Okay. All right. For those of you who are using project accounting, I do not have this turned on in my demo system, but I will share this screenshot with you. I really like this because I think this is a great enhancement, is they have provided a new capability to go in and see exactly what timesheets are missing for the organization. It's titled Manage Timesheets, and it gives a graphical representation of each of the users in the system, as well as the periods. You can change this forward and back, and identify where timesheets are missing for people who are doing time entry. Not only do they provide that, but they provide the means to go and choose those users and send an email out to them and notify them that timesheets are missing. So for anyone doing project management, I think this is probably going to be a very useful feature. In the project management, they have also offered the ability to go in, and again, I have a screenshot I'll share with you, to preview your invoices before you post them out. So now, just boost this up a little bit, you'll have the ability, when you generate invoices, to see the budgeted amount for the project relative to the invoice. And then over here, in the middle to the right, you'll see what's been billed to date, what your budgeted duration is in terms of statistics, as well as billed hours to date. So this is built into the billing of project management. some other changes that they've made. For those of you who've ever had to give Intacct support access into your system, they have gone in and they have now separated the external user setup screen and the external user authorizations. My pet peeve was always when I looked into the support access, what's their expiration date? Now it's visible in a separate screen, and you have the ability to go in and edit that just to enable or disable access into your system and change the expiration date. Those CloudBytes is embedded in each one of these screens. So now when you have to let Intacct tech support in your system, you can just take a glance and see if they still have access to it or whether you need to change the date. Okay. Some notes about security. In Intacct, the next time you change passwords, you will find that Intacct has increased their security requirements. And those new requirements are more robust. They are going to require at least 8 characters in length of a password. It's going to require at least one number, one lowercase letter, one uppercase letter, and a special character. It can be any of the special characters along the top row of the numbers. For those of you who are using Avalara, they have increased the reporting capabilities. I'm going to go over to our notes for that. I do not have Avalara installed in this system. But for those of you who are using Avalara, I'd like to point out that now there is better reporting so that you can go down and you can drill in and see your error logs and what exactly the issue is if you have a problem with an interface with Avalara for AvaTax. Previously, it was much more difficult to determine what the errors were. In terms of browser support, Intacct is now indicating that they are supporting Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari. And if you drill down into the help text, you'll see the exact versions that they're supporting at this point. And if you click on the system requirements, they will show you a table that gives you the exact version numbers for each of the browsers. Okay. One of the complaints that we've had from customers who use the expense module is that the authorizations did not conform to the authorization configuration in the rest of the Intacct system. So they have finally realigned that, and if you go into the time and expense module, you will find that the expense reimbursement approvals have been changed to line up with the approval values. So now you see that they're using the minimum numbers here. If I go down to the reimbursement approval thresholds, they mimic those. So this says that any expense account that's under $500 will not require approval. For those over 500 but under 1,000 will require 1, and those over 1,000 will require 2. So if you're using the expense module, you want to go back and take a look at this and possibly adjust your approvals to conform to this new change. Okay, that wraps up all of the changes that have taken place in the new release. I'd like to open up the session for any questions that our users might have.
Just have one question, Jim. Can you go back over the portion that you shared earlier? Gosh, it was an earlier question. Actually, now it's gone. I guess they retracted the question. Okay. The question is not here anymore, so I guess they must have answered their own question. I don't see any right now, so I guess if you don't have any additional questions or anything else to point out at this point, we'll just thank everyone for attending. And please be on the lookout for additional CloudBytes webinars. We have one every month. I know we've got one upcoming in the month of March to make your Intacct reporting work for you. That's on March 17th, and then we'll have a deep dive on April the 21st into the Intacct Collaborate. If you want to attend any of those, just jump out to our website, masseyconsulting.net, M-A-S-S-E-Y consulting.net, and look for the events or the calendar page, and you'll be able to register straight from there. So thank you, Jim, for presenting the session. We really appreciate it. It's always valuable to have the information from someone who is in the trenches and working in the systems. And thank you all for attending. I really appreciate everyone's time.